This is the Aiyima S700. It's a self-powered 2.0 bookshelf speaker set that actually threw me a twist I wasn't expecting when I powered it up for the first time. More on that in a bit. Plus, unlike some of the speakers that we've looked at recently, these things won't cost you half a mortgage payment to own. And that's a good thing, right? Right? The Aiyima S700 is rated at 100 watts RMS, so that's 50 per side, or 120 watts peak, depending on what number you're comfortable bragging to your friends about. That power is spread between one 10 watt 3.5 inch tweeter at the top and one 5.25 inch 30 watt woofer below. And again, it's spread between the two. The brains of the operation, by the way, is handled by this relatively unknown but very common Chinese chipset made by MV Silicon, the BP1048B2, which includes the DSP and the Bluetooth module. And speaking of which, there is Bluetooth 5.0 on board for connectivity with AAC and SBC, but there is no aptX of any kind, even though the processor technically supports it. I'm kind of bummed to not see it here. On the right channel here, you can see the different inputs. For example, the HDMI ARC, USB, SpeedDiff, as well as RCA. And there's also a subwoofer output as well. Here you can see the volume, bass, as well as treble. They're all digital dials, by the way. Media pause, play controls, forward, backward, and such. And this is your RCA speaker out connector to your left channel. And there is your power DC in. The materials used here are actually not bad, guys. It's just that once you see this in person live, then you start noticing, yeah, this thing is built to the price point. And some parts, you know, just feel chintzy, like the leg, the chrome surround under the legs here. I'm not sure you can see that. They're nice and soft and they're hidden most of the time, but once you pay attention to it, it looks cheap. And even the bass reflex port at the back, there's a gap here between the panel and the plastic, but it's hidden most of the time. So, it is what it is there, and the panel gaps sometimes on some places are inconsistent, but it is very nice overall. I think arguably this is a better design and a look than the S500, S600. I like this diagonal slash across the side here for the wood panel. And the front here, you can see the speaker covers have also kind of retained a little bit. Aiyima has this thing about this shape. The previous model had this hourglass version that or teardrop, and some people really didn't like it. It kind of messed with the lines of the device, and they did a little bit better here, even though I feel like this, if it was reversed, it would look much better. I think like if this was, let me try to show you, pointing this way, it might look a little bit better. But anyways, there's that. And the cover is really nice too. It's magnetically attached, not pegs or anything like that, so no ugly knobs sticking out like this, like other models. You can see the tweeter right here and the woofer are installed pretty nice, and they're solid. I noticed that during my time of testing, I didn't hear any like weird buzzing or vibration. So at least internally, and the construction on the inside, the main core stuff is solid. Some main things included in box are the connector cable for left and right. It's a 5-pin, 2 meters long roughly. And then we have the remote, which is, it's a little bit on the cheap side. It's already showing some scratches, even though I haven't manhandled this thing, but it operates really well. It has a narrow range though, so you have to pretty much point this directly at the IR sensor. So we have power, mute, and then we have movie, music, dialogue, preset EQs, pause, play, forward, backward, volume up, volume down, Bluetooth, optical, ARC, RCA, USB, all these things just change the modes. And, it works. Okay, let's be clear. These aren't going to win any kind of reference awards or beauty contests anytime soon. But then don't quickly discount the brand either, because some of you who've been around some of the best budget DAC amps, especially desktop ones lately, would have heard of Aiyima, which is usually uttered in the same sentence as something like Fosse. You know who those are, right? So at the very least, these guys know a thing or two about getting the most out of cheaper, overlooked, and sometimes older tech. And that being said, out of the box, the biggest thing that jumped out at me was the amount of bass coming out of the rear of these. So I started to get why some S700 owners say that you might never ever need a subwoofer with these. Now, mids and highs, out of the box, had potential as well, but I felt that the bass OP'd the listening experience too much, as if there was like some kind of fat Elvis in the back here huffing and chuffing on the way, doing his business. Oh. Now, it's only after I fiddled with the EQ settings in the rear that I was able to like chill this thing out. And my final settings, in case you're ever interested, were +2 for treble and a massive -5 for bass. And after that, I pretty much became a happy camper. For example, when I listened to Rochelle Farrell on I Can Explain, it's so very satisfying on these. Things like piano, strings, and vocals, I'll tell you what, tend to render nicely even before EQing, but it's electric bass guitars, they're a night and day difference after the fact. It's only in like electronic or dance tracks like the constantly driving low end in Prodigy's Breathe that causes quite a bit of backport distortion, so bass ends up sounding boomy. In terms of separation, as long as these are properly spaced and aimed roughly at your head, vocals are generally like mid-forward with everything else sitting just beyond your ears, so rather like an intimate listening experience. Although I noticed that on podcasts and certain recordings like Queen's Somebody to Love and Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar, their voices are like right smack in the middle of your head. It's really surreal, really nice. So yeah, overall, this thing is surprisingly good in a lot of musical genres. I would say if you connect this to a TV or console, they're not so hot with like action films or games, especially in loud, boomy scenes. Now, I wish I could tell you how differently these might perform when connected to a subwoofer, but I can't because either my sub out doesn't work or something, or that the speakers have a really low crossover. But in either case, if I find out more, I'll let you know down in the comments or in the description below. You know what? It's awesome that speakers like the S700 or Edifier R1700 series or the Sony CS5, even if that's a passive, they all exist today. They represent above average sound and performance at prices that ought to give premium brands a good long pause. It's definitely a win-win situation for us consumers. Not a super huge knock, but for bookshelves, the S700s are a little too deep and maybe a smidge tall to like comfortably fit on a, well, bookshelf. But then again, you arguably get a larger bass chamber and all that for the size, so maybe this should be in the positives instead. Personally, I've never been a fan of rear-mounted controls, and sure, the remote is available to manage things like media playback and mode switching and all that, but I still have to do a reach around each time to adjust the EQ, which, you know, I'm sure the Aiyima engineer initially thought that, hey, our tuning is so godlike, maybe people are just gonna use it once and never touch it again. Yeah. If only that was the case. I found adjusting the knob a necessity each time you're like switching between movie, music, and dialogue modes. When connected via Bluetooth, the S700 is hamstrung by limited SBC AAC codecs. Say what you want to say about that, but the hardware I believe can handle higher bitrate content out of box. I mean, even the product specs, just check out the website here, right here, seems to believe that the S700 has aptX HD and Bluetooth 5.4. So come on Aiyima, at the very least in the next production batch, just activate aptX HD or upgrade the chip altogether. If you can get past the swelled dimensions and the cheapish build and all that, you might be surprised by the unique sound that the Aiyima S700 brings to the table. It's smooth and rich much of the time, giving you enough detail and fun without making you feel like you've just wasted your money for nothing. The amount of bass this thing pumps out is really a nice plus. It ain't the most refined, but it gets the job done more so than many bookshelves out there. Well, that's it for the S700 video, and next week we're back to expensive speakers again. The Sonos Era 300 is in the house, yo. Thank you so much for joining me, guys, and spending your time with me. It really means a lot to me. If you like what I do, yeah, you know what to do. The buttons are all below. And remember to do something loving and kind for somebody in this world, because guess what? The world needs it more than ever, and it starts with you. I love y'all very much. Seriously, peace out and God bless.